was really interesting. And now I'm going to introduce Jonathan Barbara, that will present a paper titled Towards Measuring Consistency in Transmedial Narrative.
Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Barbara from St. Martin's Institute of Higher Education in Malta, and I've recently started my doctoral studies at Lausanne University in Germany. For my postgrad research, I sought and found a user experience instrument that allows a transmedia game designer to compare between board games and video games in terms of game mechanics and social presence. Now, my interest is to further extend the scope of game mechanics applicable to transmedia storytelling, and thus my interest in interactive digital storytelling as a major role player in transmedia narratives. In this presentation, I want to bring your attention to a user experience criterion which has been overly mentioned in transmedia literature, but never specifically measured, and that is narrative consistency. Consistency is a complex, subjective criterion and a decisive factor in judging the success of any transmedia experience, particularly applicable to interactive digital storytelling with its multiple possible narrative outcomes. I will start by reviewing why it is difficult to measure narrative consistency, why it is important, and then I will propose a scale with which to rate it. During an interview, Jeff Gomez compared transmedia narratives to an orchestra, and thus, where each instrument plays a melody that contributes to the overall symphony. And thus, an overarching narrative on the top melody is spread across multiple experiences, each of which is liable to introducing inconsistencies, as it adds more depth to the overarching story. However, unlike an orchestra, these narratives are not experienced simultaneously, and therefore any inconsistency is not as easily detected as the discordant note from any of the instruments. Indeed, there is no means that allows us to play the separate melodies together in order to evaluate the overall consistency of the transmedia narratives. But how do we measure such consistency? Due to its subjective nature, we look at user experience analysis for inspiration. User experience studies of games and interactive narratives only started in 2004, mostly adapting software development methodologies, but also involving psychophysiological measures due to their immersive nature. However, such measurements only consider same session experience as a result of game mechanics and social context. There is as yet no consideration of narrative consistency between multiple story installments across multiple media. The literature suggests 4 dimensions across which such consistency can be measured: the lore, geography, and values that make up the story world, the order of events that push forward the plot, and the characters whose traits and actions overcome the challenges they face. Finally, agency provides us with the power to take action within the narrative, as a result of which we have a say in the authorship of the story. I now refer to the literature to see the alternate meanings attributed to consistency, as well as other descriptors used to refer to similar qualities. Consistency in a story is described as one having a recognizable setting, plot, and set of characters whose actions are consistent with their psychology. With respect to agency, this should be consistent with the narrative, task at hand, and should have persistent and deterministic outcomes. Short of a simplistic remediation of a narrative, new experiences should provide novelty, without losing what Ritchie calls typicality. It is a measure of how an experience is an example of the expectations raised by an earlier experience. While keeping the same order of events, peripheral events that enrich the central narrative can be explored with plausible explanations given for any deviations from the story's canon. As experiences become more distinct while keeping a common baseline, they become equal contributors to the transmedia story world. which becomes what Cluster Pentosca called a world of worlds. In that one story world bears many distinct stories, each with their own events, characters, and subworlds. We now consider negative consistency, with different media affording different representational methods and new authors standing to introduce new perspectives, which are also subject to inconsistencies. They tend to play with their audience's memory, finding loopholes that accommodate their take on the story. Sometimes inconsistency is willingly put to satiate the angry fans who don't like the story direction and vouch for a new narrative outcome, such as in Torchwood, or to favor game mechanics of the franchise, such as the Lego franchise. When the presented inconsistency conflicts with the narrative expectations of the audience, this breaks the narrative presence and substantially undermines the quality of the experience. In interactive narratives, this is substantial when the provided agency conflicts with the narrative, leading to what Hawking termed as ludonarrative dissonance. As a result of this analysis, I am here proposing a qualitative measurement of consistency. This is based on the player's reaction to different encounters with the four dimensions of interactive transmedial narratives. I am interested to learn whether such consistency can be measured from existing UX criteria, or should new ones be considered. My proposal consists of a 5-scale rating ranging from consistent, which would be applicable to faithful adaptations, through to conflicting, which is more representative of parodies, where the inconsistencies themselves are the highlight of entertainment. Sequels would build new narratives based on the original, and thus would provide a cohesive narrative that provides justifications for any differences. Spin-offs usually share the same story world, but augment knowledge and explore new characters and events, in order to provide a narrative experience that is mostly relevant to the source narrative. I have already mentioned willful inclusion of inconsistent experiences in order to accommodate fans' expectations and the game franchise. And this is also included here. I should thank the reviewers for bringing this aspect to my attention. This scale can be applied to each of the 4 dimensions of each narrative experience, depicting levels of consistency for each experience vis-a-vis some core narrative experience, which transmedial scholars call the tentpole experience. Indeed, transmedial experiences are expected to be towards the center of this scale. Adaptations are more cross-media than transmedia, and parodies tend to break narrative consistency rather than support it. What do we do with the scale? By providing a means to compare consistency between transmedial experiences, we can analyze successful and not so successful interactive narratives, and consider whether the level of consistency is a factor of that level of success. When designing an interactive narrative at prototype stage, you can analyze a variety of employable mechanics and determine which ones provide a more consistent experience relative to the tentpole experience. As an example application, I am undergoing a study wherein reviews of movie-based games are being analyzed and coded in terms of story world, events, characters, and agency into the 5 ratings of the proposed scale. During this process, reviews called and keywords are being used to describe aspects of consistency are being gathered in order to inform future questions about narrative consistency. As a result of this analysis, reliability checks of the consistency scale can be carried out across the multiple reviews, while correlation of the consistency ratings with the review score will suggest instrument validity. From the gathered keywords, a list of questions regarding user experience in terms of narrative consistency can be shaped into a questionnaire that could be piloted using a transmedial experience. Depending on the validity results, heuristics on building successful knowledge experiences would be suggested by a minimum rating to be applied in the 4 aspects of narrative elements. And yet, we are far from having a usable tool. We still have to figure out at which level of detail should consistency be measured. Should every character in the story, each event unfolding before us, each story with artifact we encounter through the experience be analyzed in terms of this scale? If we were to gauge them at dimensional level, will the negative experiences outshine the positive ones? At the other end, shall we just fire a rating that captures the consistency of the overall experience? or maybe should a rating for each level of consistency be given for each dimension? To summarize, I came here to explore with you the meaning of the narrative consistency in transmedia and how to measure it. For my part, I propose a 5-level scale of consistency, and then inviting you to consider it and maybe use it in your analysis of your transmedial interactive narratives. These are some references, and I look forward to your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much, really interesting. Any questions? Oh, yes.
Probably the typical question. IDN provides multiple versions, thus inconsistency. Where do you put it in your scale?
Yes. So different levels of inconsistency. So having to look at more detailed explanations of how they depict these inconsistencies. In fact, in my study right now, I'm trying to find these keywords which the critics are using to describe, what they did not like about it. Sometimes they just use adjectives that one would have to judge on what level this continuum exists. It's a difficult choice. That's why being subjective, it has to have a lot of qualitative analysis in order to try to position these inconsistencies on maybe this continuum that I'm trying to find.
Any other question? So I think I have one. I was wondering if you plan, you already said just right now that you plan to also consider more qualitative approaches, but if I understand it correctly, this is more of a quantitative tool. So can you tell us something more about how, if and how you plan to integrate that with something more qualitative?
Yes, the direction is to have a quantitative tool in order to have a broader scope of analysis. So the approach here is to build questions using criteria that critics have used to describe these games. The idea is to look at a broad range of games as much as possible. Right now I'm looking at a specific game, specific story world and game versions of it, but one has to look at other franchises. And then one would need to have, say, focus groups after having played games within a story, even games that would have been planned to create a conflicting experience. So, yeah, not just passive analysis from reviews, but also interactive ones with focus groups of these goals.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any final question before we go to a coffee break? Coffee break it is. Thank you very much. We are supposed to continue at 3:10, so it's a 20-minute break.
Will be another break.
Okay. So we talk about the money. I give information outside and because I have to put my friend up in this done, so I've got nothing to do, so I can go to the dinner.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Just do that, yes.
Yes.
So how do you like the stuff you do?
Very good, very good. I am doing applicable for the stories of
Yes, in fact, we have done this stories. So we have done content stories. We are working with the school that is very, in America it's called Title I school. It's a highly popular school. and minority students. Okay. And so we have done things like incorporate this approach into language arts programs. So in some cases, it's a social science class, and you read a theory of history, and then they tell a story, they construct a story, and then it's almost like they're creating historical fiction.
Yes, that's what I'm doing.
So what were previously, what were soldiers in the Roman camps, be saying before they go out, what's that battle? Or Alexander's troops before he crosses the Hellespont, something really like that. Or in the United States, the question is like, what the use of facts is when actually, refuse to go to the back of the bus.
Yes, because history is concentrating on the event, just on the event.
We believe that